Alright, I'm recording this video in January of 2021, so I'm going over the hottest game of 2020. Mortal Shell? A heavy metal barebones Souls-like game developed by Cold Symmetry, a game studio that I wasn't totally convinced actually existed. Mortal Shell is, in some ways, only very roughly Dark Souls. The gameplay in general is clearly based on the Souls formula, emphasizing spacing, timing, weapon and enemy familiarity, and general meter management. You talk to a cryptic, soft-spoken masked lady in order to level up. There's a bell that, looking back, is of pretty dubious importance. There's a reptile/amphibian who will eat your garbage. Mortal Shell travels to all the places you'd expect a Souls game to go. An ice place, a fireplace, a spooky crypt, a geometric nightmare, and you're sometimes transported via unconventional biological means. It does, however, deviate in some respects. For example, you have a counter for parries, as they serve as a primary form of healing. This parry meter builds as you whack things. Your primary modes of defense are dodges and rolls, and turning your fleshy body into a chitinous statue and taking it on the chin, absorbing the damage of the blow. There aren't builds. There are shells that your creepy skelly man character inhabits to do murder and achieve the poorly explained nebulous goals of the video game. You don't have an Estus Flask analog item. You have mushrooms that grow in the environment and can be hoarded. As a result of excessive parry abuse and extreme cowardice, I had like 50 goddamn mushrooms by the end of the game. I just grabbed them as they grew back and didn't use them outside of bosses. The world contains many consumable items like these to cure your various inevitable disabilities or to help you travel around, switch between shells, and gain more tar. That's Mortal Shell speak for Souls. When your health runs out, you don't die. You get booted out of your shell back into your one-hit emaciated base form and have to race back in to hop the corpse you're borrowing before you get curb stomped. The game has a weird character to it, despite its, let's be generous, familiarity. You have a medieval M202 flash, which fires harpoons that jibs and pins most enemies. In order to fight bosses, you have to chug, which kills you. In order to earn new weapons, you have to read a book, which turns into a spider and kills you. When you beat bosses, it triggers a general world state change. The fog rolls in, the lights go out, spooky monsters appear from the mist, and you have to run the organ that you ripped out of the boss all the way back to your home base before this fog will clear. Which is kind of fun. But there's really only one change. You sprint past the same gargoyle-looking chumps every time you want to get your giant spleen or haunted pancreas back to the clearly not a villain who clearly isn't doing villainous things who makes progress happen in the game's story. Harros is the first shell you get, and as such is the standard issue general purpose build. On a scale of 1 to 10, he's 5. Literally. The one thing he does do very well is rock, so on the Moe's scale of 1 to 10, he's a solid 10. His skills are all focused towards getting hard faster, better, or longer than other shells, and getting hard is sometimes a matter of life and death. When you're staring down the barrel, hanging on for dear life, you can't afford to go soft. And Harros is always at full mast, ready to pound adversaries into submission. He's actually a super safe choice and can handle all the challenges that the game throws at you. Effective defense really translates to effective offense in this game, especially during bosses. In New Game Plus, however, most enemy attacks start to do chip through harden, so dodging and parrying become more crucial defensive maneuvers. And if you're gonna harden, you'd want a higher health pool to manage the chip that happens, largely making Harros obsolete. Solomon is a cheat code repost machine. He's ostensibly a scholar, but his scholarly attributes seem weirdly focused on counter-stabbing. Perhaps it's a clever commentary on the jabbing nature of academic debate. Perhaps it's just because there isn't any kind of magic system in the game, so they decided that the scholar should just have gotten his PhD in murderology through the mail from Perry University. That aside, he's ridiculously effective. He heals from weapon specials, builds parry meter from talking to people, has a chance to completely refill the parry gauge on a riposte kill, and has a buff to overall health or said parry gauge depending on the game state. At a certain point, he just kind of stomps on everyone, chain staggering bosses with weapon specials and healing himself repeatedly. He just has raw better stats than Harrow, so at a certain point, especially in New Game Plus, you'll likely just switch to him. Aerodrim is a tank. He has the biggest health pool, and his upgrades, instead of managing a meter or a cooldown, are based around doing more damage, taking more damage, and staggering enemies. This massive, chunky power comes with a cost. Aerodrim has emphysema from years of inhaling tar smoke and ghost fumes. As a result, he waddles around like an old man without his oxygen tank, can only swing a sword a few times, and would be better off traversing the world with a mobility scooter. That said, if you manage that tiny pool of stamina and hit like a truck, you can really beef bus your way through most of the problems that crop up. Teal is the roguey character, by which I mean he is too cool to dodge roll like a normal person. He takes 2 hits to die, but he can run for a very long time. His playstyle is perhaps most comparable to Aerodrim, oddly. Since Harros and Solomon take advantage of the game's more unique characteristics, hardening and the parry meter, Aerodrim and Teal utilize the more traditional aspects, raw health and raw stamina. So Teal spends a lot of time dodging, but he also spends more time swinging. His talents focus on poisoning for health and profit, doing either smoke bomb hit and runs, or a huge rush down, trying to body enemies in a huge, unbroken stun-locking combo. It seems, strangely, like some kind of video game so far. And it is. But it very critically isn't Dark Souls. It doesn't have the atmosphere or panache of Dark Souls. The ambiguity it emits isn't couching some kind of metaphor. It's just kind of ambiguous. The story doesn't have as much drive. I was not terribly curious about the world, and the world didn't seem terribly concerned with informing me. You approach most situations with the same strategy and attitude. It can be slightly difficult at times, but it never really forces you to reconsider your strategy like a Souls game does. It just tells you to do better or get more upgrades. The beginning of the game can drag because of this. Until you figure out what you're doing or where you're supposed to be going, the game can be a little arcane. But once you figure it out, you just start rolling over everything. It's also exceptionally brief. Even over the course of yucking it up to test different playstyles, boost shells I didn't use, and record this terrible video, I did 2 playthroughs in about a week, and I take breaks to eat and sleep and stuff. There are only 4 weapons to learn, and there are only 4 or 5 main bosses, 3 of whom are just large human-like enemies. This might actually be a good thing. The game doesn't have the lore-driven impulse power that Soulsborne games have, so it gets in and gets out without dragging its feet. It's a largely pleasant experience with not overly derivative but familiar gameplay, no glaring technical issues, and it's not too difficult to pick it up at a discount. The only real downside is that sometimes you realize that the tone and story beats seem eerily reminiscent of a much better game. My friend bought this so that we could give it a try, and it felt like when your mom gets home with groceries and your heart sinks as you recognize the label of generic cola. Yeah, it's still marvelous sugar water to a child, but it isn't the same. And it feels like she's the only one who doesn't know that. Or maybe she does know that, and she can't bear to tell her baby boy that times are tough, and the bank is trying to take the house, and Great Value Cola is the only thing keeping this family together. The point being, give Mortal Shell a try. It's far more pleasant than most other Souls clones, while being mostly less of a shameless knockoff. It's not as demanding in time or willpower, and assholes with funny names can't randomly join to enhance your gaming experience.